Hi, everyone. Welcome to 5 Questions with LeRoy Butler. This is going to be part 1 of 2 episodes we're going to do on the end of the season. And so this one, we're going to focus a little bit on just looking at the season and what went wrong, what went right, and where do they go from here. Next week, we'll take a look at the free agents and some of the off-season things.
So that segment may not be long.
Let's talk about this season. Let's go right to the defense. I mean, that's what most people want to talk about. Number one, they want to talk about Dom Capers and the job he did. I say let's look at Dom Capers, and let's also look at the 3-4 if that's the right defense for the Packers to be playing.
Well, I think the scheme works. I like the scheme. I think it's very innovative. But they don't have the players to run it. They have players out of position. They have players who they're developing who were probably brought to the organization to play one position but playing another. Mike Neal, Nick Perry. I think B.J. Raji could be in a better scheme. I think for the most part, the good defenses, if you're going to go to a 3-4 defense, your linebackers got to be athletic. They got to be smart. And they got to be willing to cut it loose. And you just don't see that. And the first 4 or 5 weeks, you kind of saw it. But I think it's unfair for Don Capers. Every week, he's coaching a different 11 guys to start the game. And I think for the most part, he didn't factor in that Casey Hayward and Matthews wasn't going to be there. Talking about, let's be realistic. Both of those guys are going to probably miss 4 to 6 games the rest of their career with hamstring problems or hurt or whatever. But a lot of money is invested in Matthews, and maybe they can't go out and spend, and we'll talk about that later. But the scope of the defense, if you look at the Packers' defense, they're just not built for a 3-4.
So you're saying the personnel is not built for the 3-4?
No, absolutely not. For the last 4 or 5 years, you don't have a true 3-4 linebacker outside.
Right.
It was a guy that came in that was in a 4-3, a modified version, but you want to stand him up. You got a guy came in who's a defensive lineman, now he's your outside linebacker. So some of the athletic plays in the flat area that we saw, some of the mistakes, I mean, do you really blame the guy? Yeah. Because he's never done it before. So, and it's almost go back to what they tried to do with, I forgot the young man who went to Jacksonville, lineman, I forgot the name. But anyway, you got to put a guy in a position that he's comfortable with, and you got to put
Aaron Campman.
Aaron Campman, thank you. You got to put him in a guy to understand that I can just cut it loose. I don't have to think about it. But when I got to worry about like losing weight or gaining weight or filling this particular gap when I've never done it before, it's a process to that. And maybe these guys will be better at that next year. But this year, can you really ask these guys to win a Super Bowl when they're playing out of position?
So, in other words, I guess what you're saying is, you're counting on rookies, but you're asking them to play different positions than they played in college. So all of a sudden, Nick Perry, who was a defensive end, has to learn to play linebacker, and he only plays it for 6 games as a rookie because he's hurt, and then this year he's just not as good. Dayton Jones was a stand-up linebacker in college, and now you want him to be a defensive end. So you're Brad Jones. He was a defensive end in college. He's playing inside linebacker. Jamari Lattimore was a defensive end, and he's playing inside linebacker. So you think they need to find guys who play these natural positions, especially if they're going to ask them to play as rookies?
Absolutely. I think you need to find a true nose guard. A guy 6'4", 6'5", 350 pounds.
A Casey Hampton type.
Yeah, Haloti Ngata, one of those guys. And just get guys in their natural position. Now you don't have to worry about the progression of them, because that could be holding these guys back. And I think a lot of that falls on Ted Thompson, because I think when you put your defense in a position and you get that game plan, I got to absorb that game plan by Friday, and I got to cut it loose after that time. I can't think about all the other stuff. And I think that's what could be holding this defense back. But I know that the Packers have a different way of looking at it. But they really need to look at their roster deeply on defense and see, are we really helping these guys? Because I think the system, again, it works. But if you want a guy to line up at outside linebacker and run to the middle of the field and he's your middle guy, and it's Mulumba and Nick Perry. And when you freeze frame it, they're not even looking at the ball. They don't know if it's a run or pass.
They're not used to playing there.
They're just thinking, I got to get back there.
Right.
That could be holding the whole defense back.
They're not naturals at that position.
Absolutely.
You know, and Matthews is the exception. He played defensive end in college, but he's such a good athlete.
He's a great athlete.
And of course, he was an elephant end, which is a little bit of a hybrid end linebacker. So he was, you know, he was a little bit more advanced than Andy Mulumba.
Oh,
and,
no question.
You
no
know,
question.
Perry and these guys.
He could put his hand in the dirt and stand up. But again, I know I meet a lot of fans. They go to the 4-3. I don't necessarily know if you have the talent for that either. But whatever, if you agree to bring Capers back, which I think they will, look at the roster, find out the guys that we're going to bring in are hardcore guys to play his system, to give him some bullets for his gun. He can't go into these fights with no bullets.
Okay, now, but let's look at the secondary, because that's been an issue, I mean, probably since the Super Bowl year. It seems like, okay, when you've got a Nick Collins, Tramon Williams, Charles Woodson, Sam Shields, Charlie Pepra, we're talking about everybody in that year but Shields was a veteran. You know, had been around the block. They play pretty well, but you start putting in, you know, the Morgan Burnett's and M.D. Jennings and, you know, Richardson, even Micah Hyde to a degree. I think he's going to be a good player, but I think, you know, he'd have to take his lumps this year. Can you play with, you know, the draft and develop guys in the secondary in this defense, or is it just impossible?
Well, I think defense is somewhat complicated, but it's only complicated if you haven't done it before. You have to have athletic safeties to play this system. Because remember, at any time, you can rush just 3 and drop 8. Well, if you look at the explosion plays over the course of the year, I mean, you can't give up 8 and 9 explosion plays. Those are plays over 20 yards. And your safeties had no interceptions.
None.
I mean,
that's amazing.
Both guys, you know, you have to put guys in a position to make plays. And once you put them in position, they got their athletic talent comes out. But I think Morgan Burnett, M.D. Jennings, they were so worried about being lined up correctly, they couldn't cut it loose. That could be a combination of a lot of things. That could be a combination of guys maybe being, you know, too tight and too stiff, the way they have to actually work on their backpedaling in the off season, maybe drop a few pounds and get more in your torso, more flexibility, or they got to find a guy for the right system. You can draft and develop on an offense. When defense comes, you need a guy back there that knows exactly what he's doing and cut it loose. And I'm not saying go out and overpay a guy $30, $40, $50 million. That's not what I'm saying. But you got to get a guy that fit their system. And this year it wasn't that.
We were talking just before the cameras were on about Charlie Pepra. Here he's a starting safety in their defense. Not a great player.
No,
you know, you'd like a much more athletic guy out there, but he was in the place he should be, and he made enough plays that you know, he'd allowed Nick Collins to do his thing. And I think they're missing those type of players. And do you think they need to start over at safety?
I think they do. Micah Hyde, in my opinion, should be the safety because he can't play outside, and for that matter, I don't think Casey Hayward either. Your outside guys have to be 37 and 38. And we'll talk about 37 Shields later. But my point is that you're not athletic enough in the secondary, Tom, to defend these teams to have an athletic tight end, who have a powerful receiver like Anquan Bolden. These guys are big enough to do that. So Micah Hyde, should, I think, in my opinion, should be your safety.
Okay. We need to talk a little bit about offense. They have a darn good offense. They have a ton of talent. If they don't lose Rodgers in the middle of the season, they're probably cruising, you know, they have a great year. But there's a point I want to make, or I did make, and Mike McCarthy didn't quite enjoy the question. But, you know, they've lost 3 playoff games at home, in the cold, at Lambeau Field. I mean, think about that. In your day, that would have been blasphemy. You know, your team was built for winning at Lambeau Field in December and January. I know Ron Wolf talked about that all the time. My question is, are there still some things they can do so that when a 49er team that's tough like that they can compete with that and not have to rely on their passing game so much. Eddie Lacy was great. You know, they made a great improvement there. But
yes.
do they need to maybe have this blocking tight end, you know, like a real blocking tight end or a jumbo package that they can go to so that come winter they can play physical with that?
I think you're right on with that. I think for the most part, McCarthy won't say it's the weather, he'll say it's execution. But for the most part, next year they'll be built more for it because now you get all your offensive linemen back.
Right.
Bakhtiari could be that guy come in as a tight end, you know, because he's athletic enough to maybe move and go in motion and stuff like that. He can do it like they used to do with Kevin Berry. He can probably do that, but the offensive line, I think, should be in good shape. Now, as far as how you're built for the cold, they ran Eddie Lacy a lot. The way he's running now, you're looking at a 5-year career because he takes a lot of unnecessary hits.
Right.
He has to learn how to get out of bounds and things like that. If you can keep him and Starks together, two big backs, you know, we'll talk about Starks later, but if you can keep Eddie Lacy 18 to 20 carries max, and he has to catch the ball out of the backfield, now you're starting to build for the cold weather. Because I'm going to tell you something, I told people this all the time. It doesn't matter if it's 40 below or 40 degrees. If you're all pro, you're all pro.
Sure.
But you got to put your team in a position to understand this is what we're going to do. And I think that's why they started slow against San Francisco, Tom. It was a difference in how we should start the game.
Right, right.
Yeah. We ran the ball 3 straight times. Should we throw? I mean, I kind of threw teams off.
I just think you come out, if you come out and you've got a fullback ahead of Eddie Lacy and you say, we're going to establish Eddie Lacy till you stop him. The 49ers play a cover too. They don't blitz you that much. They don't. They're going to play back and worry about Aaron Rodgers, and most teams are. So maybe it's time you line up for part of that game and you just say, okay, stop Eddie Lacy. And and I think that was part of what my question was are you built to do that kind of stuff?
Well, Lacy was 2 guys made the team tougher. Eddie Lacy on defense and Johnny Jolly on defense. And Johnny Jolly obviously didn't play the last quarter of the season very much. And Lacy, you know, although he was hurt, he played hard. But you got to try to keep him fresh. In the fourth quarter, that's when you're built for the fourth. You know, these games, you're up, it's cold, you can just run and hammer the football. And I think the Packers have learned something this year. We have an ace in the hole, but who's going to pull back? Is Aaron going to pull back and cater to Lacy?
Right.
Or is Lacy going to say, look, I got to learn how to catch the ball because they're going to throw the football.
Right.
They got to figure that out fast.
Yeah, that's something they are going to have to figure out.
Now, you think Aaron would do that?
No.
Because his numbers will go from the potential 5,000 yards to maybe 3,800.
I think maybe a little later in his career he would. You know, I think to Favre, you know, and he had a hard time doing that. But in 03 when they had, you know, he was later in his career and they had Amon Green and they just ran all the time. And I think that comes with maturity. And I don't blame Rodgers. He's MVP type of player. He should want to throw every time he has the ball. But, you know, that's part of being a head coach and figuring out what it is that's going to, you know, have you win.
And make no mistake about it, the reason why they were in that position was because Aaron Rodgers came back and was able to throw the football.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot of fans think we should just give it to Eddie Lacy 30 times. You're still going to need Rodgers to do that. But again, it was a great season only because, you know, Detroit choked this thing away and Chicago didn't do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
I won't even mention Minnesota. But if you're a Packer fan, you got to be excited that at least you got some pieces to move forward with.
Yeah. Starting with Aaron Rodgers and Eddie Lacy. You got 2 guys like that. Randall Cobb, if you can keep him healthy. I mean, that's a lot. They have a lot to build on.
And the offensive line, they're going to have a lot of guys back.
Right.
And that's going to be good. They can do more things with that. So, and they got a lot of guys, and we're going to talk about it next. A lot of guys that's going to be on the free agent market. They got to sign to make this team stronger. Yeah,
we didn't even get to special teams. We're running out of time, but you know that's a lot that has to change.
That has to get better.
Yeah,
maybe we'll try to squeeze it in. I don't know if it'll work.
Anyway, well, thanks for joining us. And next week we'll be talking about free agents and the off season.